You ever wonder why a tiny sale on a new TV can cause a total stampede, but when gas prices shoot through the roof, we all kind of just keep filling up our tanks? Well, that's not random. It's actually a core principle of economics. And believe it or not, the key to understanding the whole thing is as simple as stretching a rubber band.
Yeah, seriously. Just imagine that consumer demand is this rubber band, you know? For some products, it's super stretchy, but for others, it's stiff, almost like it won't budge at all. And the pull, the thing that's testing this stretchiness, is always the same thing, a change in price. So how much it stretches, well, that's what we call elasticity. Okay, so let's get right to it. This brings us to the big question, right? When price pulls on demand, how does it react? Does it snap back? Does it stretch out a mile? Or does it barely even move? Well, that reaction is exactly what economists are trying to measure when they talk about the elasticity of demand. All right, here's the official textbook definition, but don't let the fancy language fool you. All it's really asking is, how stretchy is the demand for this thing? It's that simple. If a tiny price change causes a huge change in how much people are buying, we say the demand is elastic. But if the price can swing wildly and people's buying habits barely even shift, well, then it's inelastic. So how do we actually measure that stretch? With a number? Well, yeah, and this is the formula right here. It looks a little mathy, but it's actually a super simple and really powerful ratio. All we're doing is taking the percentage change in how much people want to buy and dividing it by the percentage change in the price. What you get is just one single number that perfectly sums up that whole price-demand relationship. It's pretty neat. Okay, theory is one thing, but let's actually put this thing to the test. Let's run the numbers on a really simple scenario and see how this formula actually works, how it gives us a clear answer. So, here's our situation. Let's say the price of something goes up from 10 rupees to 12. That's a 20% increase, right? And in response, demand falls from 100 units down to 80, which is also a 20% decrease. So let's plug that into our formula. We've got a 20% change in quantity divided by a 20% change in price. So what does that give us? The answer is 1, a perfect 1. And that number isn't just random. It has a very, very specific meaning. It's telling us that the demand for this product has a perfectly proportional relationship with its price. Now, when that calculation comes out to exactly 1, economists have a name for it: unitary elastic demand. And going back to our analogy, it means the rubber band stretched in perfect proportion to how hard we pulled it. The change in demand perfectly mirrored the change in price. But I gotta tell you, this kind of perfect balance, it's pretty rare in the real world. You see, in the real world, elasticity is more like a whole spectrum. On one end, you've got demand that's as rigid as a steel rod. It just won't bend. And on the other extreme, you have demand that can stretch out almost infinitely. And of course, most products you can think of falls somewhere in between. So this table here lays out that whole spectrum for us. Let's walk through it. So at the very bottom, you have perfectly inelastic. That's when the value is 0. The perfect example is life-saving medicine, like insulin. I mean, think about it. The price could double, but the demand from a patient who needs it isn't going to change. It's that steel rod we talked about. Okay, moving up, we have inelastic, where the value is less than 1. This is like salt. If the price goes up a bit, are you really going to stop buying it? Nah, you probably won't even notice. Then right in the middle, there's our unitary elastic. That's our perfect one-to-one stretch from the example. Okay, now things get stretchy. Highly elastic is anything greater than 1. Think about branded chocolates. If one brand raises its price even a little, demand just snaps right over to the other, cheaper brand. And finally, you've got the crazy theoretical extreme: perfectly elastic. Imagine 2 identical vegetable vendors side by side. If one of them raises their price by just a tiny bit, their demand could literally drop to 0 in an instant, because everyone would just go to the other guy. Okay, so we get the what, but what about the why? You know, why is insulin a steel rod and a chocolate bar a super stretchy rubber band? Well, it turns out there are a few key factors that determine all this. And lucky for us, there's a really handy way to remember them. And we can remember them with this little acronym, SNF. Let's break it down. First up, S is for substitutes. It's simple. The more alternatives you have, like, say, tea versus coffee, the more elastic the demand is going to be. And hey, this is exactly why brands spend billions on marketing, right? They're trying to convince you there are no good substitutes for their product. Okay, next is N for the nature of the good. Necessities like rice are pretty inelastic. Luxuries like the latest iPhone, super elastic. I is for the chunk of your income you spend. You're going to be really sensitive to a price change on something huge like your rent. That makes the demand elastic. But a price change on a box of matches? You won't even blink. T is for time. See, over a long period, we can almost always find alternatives for things, which means demand gets more elastic the longer you wait. And finally, H is for habit. Things that are part of our daily routine, like that morning cup of tea or coffee, tend to be really inelastic. We just buy them without thinking.
Okay, so we've got the theory, we've got the formula, we've got the factors, but so what? Why does any of this actually matter in the real world? Why should you care? Well, because understanding this concept, it's like getting a pair of economic X-ray glasses.
I'm serious. This isn't just some dusty classroom concept. It is the hidden logic behind almost every pricing strategy you see. Businesses are using it constantly to squeeze out more profit. Just think about airline tickets. Last-minute business travelers, their demand is super inelastic, so the prices just soar. Governments use it too. They slap taxes on inelastic things like cigarettes and alcohol because they know people will keep buying them anyway. Once you get this, you start to see the hidden economic forces that are shaping your entire world.
So I'm going to leave you with a question. Now that you have these X-ray glasses on, I want you to look at the world around you. Look at the products and services you use every single day. And ask yourself, which ones have companies worked the hardest on to make my demand for them as inelastic, as totally unstretchy as possible? Because once you start looking for it, I promise you, you will see this principle absolutely everywhere.